I feel like sometimes you think that you're always going to be 100% at work, and then something happens to you, and you're like, oh, I have this major life event that I now have to navigate around my professional life. And we don't really talk about a lot of that stuff, and we might not have a perfect blueprint for it. So that's what we're going to give you on today's show. We're going to solve all the personal life events you could possibly have in your entire life.
Yep.
And how it relates to your work. I'm Kyle.
I'm Kayla.
And this is Per My Last Email. Kayla, let's bust into it.
Yeah, I mean, I have a statistic that I'd like to share.
A stat right up top.
Yeah.
Okay.
The source is me.
Okay.
/ maybe common sense.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, most people don't call this a statistic.
I
but
did the research.
All right.
And
I don't think you did.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
All right.
100% of people will have a life event.
Anecdotally, everyone I've known.
Everyone has had life happen.
Yeah.
So this applies to you.
That's a good stat.
It's a good stat.
Yeah.
I did the research.
Yeah. We should have like a Kayla's Corner section where you just have some
where
stats
I make
like
up
this.
statistics.
Yes.
They're just like, duh. So this is obvious. We like to think that we can separate, work life and personal life, but we can't. For the most part, I think that there's going to be a little bit of blending, a little blurring of the lines, whether you become friends with a coworker or you bring your personal life into the office. It's going to happen. So we wanted to talk about distractions.
Yeah, distractions like in your personal life.
Events. Yeah.
And they could be good distractions. They could be not so good distractions. And what I think is very interesting about this, like, I feel like when you get a new job, the thing you envision is like I'm going to work from like 8 to 8 or 9 to 5 or whatever you have every single day, Monday through Friday, and I'll enjoy the weekends and like nothing will get in the way. It just feels like, you're not going to think about how your relationship might change or you get engaged or your parent gets sick. And then those things happen and you're like, I was not prepared for this and I haven't thought about how to navigate these situations. And even if it's not happening to you, you might work with someone on your team who, I don't know, is planning a wedding, let's say, like Kayla just did. Or, their family member gets sick and they're a little out of pocket for a while and you have to pick up the slack in some capacity. And I just think it's something that you don't think about, you don't predict until it kind of punches you in the face. And what we want to do is help you have a plan for when that happens.
Yes. So as Kyle alluded to, I did just get married.
Let's go. Kayla's married. Great wedding.
Now it was a great wedding.
I made it to the after party. Don't remember much after that. But
I think that you bounced pretty quickly after the beginning of the after party.
It's called being responsible.
Yeah.
And I went home and
Amazing.
slept.
That's important. But anyone who's planned a wedding, you might know that it takes up a lot of time, especially if it's the more traditional, bigger wedding. And I got engaged probably like a year and a half before I had the wedding. And there's some stuff that you do up front, and then you kind of have this like waiting period, and then there's a ton of stuff. I'd say for 2 months or so before the wedding, it was like having a part-time job. Like I was spending a minimum of 10 hours a week doing stuff. And you're like, I'm not going to be that person. We're not going to be spending all this time thinking about the wedding. No, you are.
I didn't. I pulled it off quite well, but I want to stay on you for now.
But I'm saying for a traditional big wedding.
Yes.
And it's not just like, oh, I have to pick out what color napkins and stuff like that, because we didn't really have to do that. It's like, oh, my friends plus one is wondering if their outfit fits the vibe, and they're sending pictures.
Yeah, and it's like 2:30 and you're in a meeting and you're like,
I'm getting a
off.
bunch of texts, and it's like, you can say that you're going to separate. Oh, I'm expecting I'm going to have this. It's a good thing. It's also not like a super serious thing that happened. Yeah,
it's just, uniting two souls in everlasting love, but not that serious.
No, but like the act of planning a wedding, it's like, it's an event. It's like a nice, happy party. It's hard to be like, oh, I gotta go. I like have a meeting with my alterations for my dress, whatever. But it is still distracting to get these notifications, to be thinking, oh my gosh, I have one more day before I have to do blah, blah, blah. Should I be on Etsy? Should I be personalizing my cocktail napkins? Like, I don't know. Do I need drink stirrers? Like maybe.
Yeah.
Is that gonna make this like wedding? Okay, I'll get off it because I could talk about this for hours. But it did impact how focused I was at work.
Yeah. And that's what I want to dive into. So was there ever a part of you when you were planning the wedding, or maybe when you realized you were going to have to, where you were like, I'm a little concerned this is going to affect my work?
Yep.
Did that ever happen to you?
No, not at all.
You never had that thought?
I didn't because I'm an asshole. And I was like, I'm a cool girl. Like, I'm not going to let wedding planning ruin. I'm going to be
I barely even think about it. I don't even know I'm getting married.
literally, I was like, ugh, like everyone says it's such a big deal. And I'm like, not going to make it a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, it's actually a really big deal. You're
Yeah.
spending a lot of money. You like want to make sure it's nice and like how you want it to be.
Yeah.
So it didn't even occur to me.
So then walk us through as the wedding is approaching and you're at work, like how much of a distraction did you feel like it was? How did you communicate that to like Austin? Like, did you sit down and say, hey, like my life is changing, so my schedule is going to need to change? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah. So it was lucky that it was there was like 2 weeks where it was really, really intense on the wedding planning side and happened to be really, really light on the work side. And so when it's really, really light on the work side, typically what I do is I do my job and then I'm like, what other projects could I take on? And like, how do I go above and beyond? I was not doing that. So like for those 2 weeks specifically, like if I finished my work at 3, it was like Etsy was up.
Yeah.
Right? From 3 to 5, I was in the office, like Googling shit.
But Austin, she finished her work.
No, but I did finish my work. I did finish my work. And then when it also meant that like, if something ended at 5:30 and I had to like do wedding stuff, like I was out the door at 5:31. Like I was not lingering. I was like, I had really, really strong boundaries. And I actually did go to Austin, my boss, in like the heart of that. And I was like, listen, these things are about to ramp up. The wedding planning is about to ramp down, but I'm just letting you know, like, this is what's going on. It's getting a little crazy. And I just want you to know, like, I'm doing all my work, but I might be working from home a few more days because I have to go to meetings or whatever.
Yeah, or your hours might be a little different.
Yeah,
which is
started working earlier, whatever.
Yep.
And there was no problem there. But again, this is like a pretty low key thing with a hard end date.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm not mentally distraught because of the wedding, although of course there are like your little things. But I wasn't like, I can't even think about work because this life event is so like, it's going to alter my life. And I think this was like a very much like a tier 1 life event.
Yeah.
Distraction.
Yeah.
At work. But you have a life event.
Okay. Kayla's making me announce it on the podcast.
Would you like to?
Yeah. We talked about this before.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I was like, wait, shit, am I an
Well, yeah, I'll bring it up, but then there's more things I want to talk about.
Okay.
But my wife, so I am married too. My wedding was in a courthouse, and we did it one day, and
It was way faster. You did not have to tell Robert that you were gonna.
I did, but it didn't affect my.
No, you
my
weren't
work.
like, I'm gonna be taking off at 5 o'clock.
Still have never been on Etsy. Yeah.
That's great.
And now my wife is pregnant. And
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we're at 21 weeks, and so now I'm having to start thinking about like, okay, my life is going to get a little more quote unquote distracting in a beautiful way. But even now, it's much worse for her. But there is more like doctor's appointments that I've never had to go to in the past that now are on my calendar. And of course, it's something that you're thinking about kind of all the time because there's another little baby in there.
It's huge deal.
And so you want to be thinking about it, and it's like very joyous, but also you want to balance that with your responsibilities
Of course.
at work. And so I think that's what is so interesting is navigating this. And I think my hot take is, it was something you were saying when you were like, oh, I'm like a cool person. Like it's not going to affect me. Or like, we want to like reassure people, like I'm still getting my work done. I think my hot take is like, yeah, you will be kind of worse at work.
Yeah.
I think
Depending
like
on the event for sure.
Depending on the event, and particularly if it's like a big illness or something like that, like you are going to be distracted. And I feel like the more we like gaslight ourselves that like everything is fine, I'm still locked in. It like I feel like then you're going to like explode at some point and have a meltdown. Whereas I think like actually what needs to change is the culture where it's like life has uneven seasons. And at some point when you don't have a lot of distractions, you're really committed to like your job in that particular moment, and you can go 8 to 8 every single day, rinse and repeat. That's great. And then there's gonna be other times where you have a wedding, you're anticipating growing your family. Someone in your family is really sick, and like I think it's okay to admit that like you're gonna spend some time thinking about that.
Yeah.
Whereas you even mentioned before, it might be thinking about future projects or something like that. And that's okay. And I think it all balances out over the long run.
Yeah, and I have like a few other questions I want to talk about
Okay.
your life event specifically, but
Yes, baby
before that-
girl.
yes.
We're not naming her yet.
Yes. Before all of that, I think this was one of the tactics I wrote down, which is expectation setting is going to be one of the best things that you can do to set yourself up and your team up for success when you're having a life event. And when I was saying I'm a cool girl and like, which obviously like is so stupid.
I mean, you are wearing a strawberry sweater,
I am
which is
definitively uncool.
No, I was going to say with matching shoes, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen, but continue.
But it's like, I think trying to like, I was lying to myself, but I also didn't know. And like when it comes up, that's when I made those expectations clear to my boss.
Yep.
Saying I'm going to be like, have strict boundaries. 5 o'clock, I'm going to be leaving. That way he's not like, why is she gone? I wonder if she's working on the wedding. Like, is she not super devoted to the job? I think where things mess up is when you're like, I'm having this life event, but it's not going to bother me. And that's what you convey to your team or your coworkers or your boss. And then it does, because it will, right? Depending on what it is, it definitely will.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to put this front up that you're fine, or you're not able to meet those expectations, that's when things start to get icky for everyone, because then it's like, is your coworker going to be like, hey, you're caretaking a parent. You told me it wasn't going to impact your work, and now you're missing deadlines.
Yep.
How do I approach that conversation with you?
Yeah.
Versus like, hey, I'm now caretaking a parent. It's going to take up a lot of my life. It might mean that I slip up on things, but I'd love for there to be an open communication channel about this. I'd love help when I can, and I'd love to like give as much as I can in this situation.
Yeah.
That just might not be 100%.
I think this is such a good point that I think we've all worked for someone who has gone through a life event at some point and either never brought it up, but you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And you see how it's distracting them, but they're just not talking about it. Or they're explicit and they're like, my grandma is on her deathbed.
Yeah.
But it's not going to affect my work at all.
Right.
Of course it is. And then it does, but it feels like you can't bring it up because they're like, it's not going to, so don't talk about it. And again, like I think everyone has their own level of comfort with sharing personal details. My preference as someone working with someone would for them to be like, hey, this is going on in my life. Here's how I think it will affect my work. And here's the new kind of boundaries or my new schedule that I have to work with. Yeah. And I'm telling you because, we're a team and you ought to know if we're going to still produce really high quality work. Here's how I'm going to like be present for the next couple of weeks. Here's my ask for you if you're comfortable with that. And I think when done right, what's beautiful about it is, one, I think it brings teams closer together. Yeah. Like the amount of times like people you probably weren't talking to a lot at Morning Brew were like asking about the wedding.
Yeah.
And it brings you closer together. And then you're a little more comfortable slacking them about something work related too. But also it's this comforting feeling where, oh, okay, like my boss is out in front of it. They're being a little vulnerable. They're saying that like they're not always going to be 100%. That makes me feel really good that when I have a major life event, I'm comfortable going to my boss and telling them because they would do the same for me. And that is something like Robert was like actually one of the first people that I told that Sierra was pregnant, because I was like, this is going to affect some of the scheduling that I have to do. I have to go to doctor's appointments during the day now. And I want you to know that because like you're my boss. And to his credit, he was so understanding. And that only makes me like, one, love this company even more, really want to keep working for him, but also more devoted to the company. And I think overall way healthier. So the disclaimer and the vulnerability, I think, can be a real positive if done correctly.
Yeah, and I think I have some follow-up questions on how you decided and when you decided to tell people. But before we get to that, like, I think we're also both talking about positives.
Okay.
So, like, me wedding planning and being engaged and stuff, like, people coming up to me and, like, I'm talking about them a little bit more.
It's a great point.
It's like...
Things people want to celebrate.
People want to talk about. It's very exciting. And it's like, oh, I got married once. Like, let me give you a tip or something. Or like, oh my gosh, like my boyfriend and I are thinking about it. Like, let's talk about what are you doing? If it's like, I have cancer, which it's like, that is a really hard thing to share. And is also a life event and will impact. But I also think that having that conversation with at least some trusted coworkers can have that same impact.
Yeah.
And if you try to hold in a negative life event, it's just like people are inherently like good, generous people most of the time. And there are some cases where like if you're disclosing something that you could be penalized for, I think there's always concerns there and you have to be very careful.
Yes.
But like saying you have an illness or saying that something's happening to you and your family, I think can also have hopefully the benefit of becoming closer to coworkers and friends.
It's a really good point. Have you had a coworker or an experience where someone had to share something that wasn't positive news but was a big life event?
Yeah.
And like, how do you feel like that all went without, naming names?
Yeah, I'll anonymize as much as I can. I'm trying to think about how to do this. In a previous job, I had a coworker who there was something clearly up. So they started out like extremely devoted to the job, extremely devoted to the team, very like yes and. Very bubbly, very excited, and then very suddenly changed. And so I spent a lot of time speculating, like, are they trying to quit? Like, what is going on? Do they hate me specifically? Like, what's happening here? And like, they're missing deadlines, and they're like, it doesn't feel like they're as interested in the work. Does that mean that there's something wrong with the team? Like, are we getting let go? Like all this crazy stuff.
And just, I think something's really important that you said there is if people do understand, like something is up.
Something's up.
And so it sucks because you might not want to disclose it, but people are going to speculate then of like, are you leaving the company? And so just include that in your calculation of like, should I disclose or not? Is like, if you don't, people are going to speculate that. You might be totally fine with that, but that is part of the calculation.
Yeah. And so when I was told the situation that I'm going to anonymize this, a parent was sick. Then it was like, oh, of course. Like all the like happy hours where I was complaining about this coworkers to my like friends outside of work, like now I feel like the asshole. Because I was like, why is this person not doing their job? And then I'm like, of course they're not doing their job. Like, I would be so distraught if I had that same news. And it would be so hard. And I'm not saying that they should have, like, it was their journey. Like, I'm not saying they should have said something earlier. But I am saying that, like, I gave them so much more grace. And I picked up work on their behalf. And I, like, understood where they were coming from. In a way that, like, completely changed our relationship and like our work. But again, it's your own path. So like I'm not saying like everyone has to say when you have a sick parent, tell everybody. Because that could also be uncomfortable.
They're very difficult situations to navigate. But in this particular example, probably what this person wanted, which was like support and for someone to pick up the slack, and what you actually wanted and were willing to do, which is just that. You could have found that much sooner if they had been open about the situation going on.
And we'll be right back after this. Okay, back to the show.
I had one in my a previous role where a coworker's parent had passed away. And that was, obviously very hard on them, but we actually went down to the funeral or the like pre-funeral or whatever it's called. And I think that was like a really cool team experience as well. And like, as much as we want to say, like, you separate work from life and you have your colleagues and your friends, like, they are people you spend a lot of time with. And I think just understanding that when you take a job, in my opinion, you're kind of like opting in to having to care about these people as people. And I think there's things that happen in your life where colleagues step up in a big way and help you through some of these big personal life events. And it brings the team closer together. I think you end up producing better work over the long haul. It makes other people more comfortable to share their own vulnerabilities and their own things that are happening. And so I think it can be this like, it's like post-traumatic growth almost. We're like, that's the thing. Where like you go through something traumatic, but the end result collectively is like you end up in a much better spot because you have support. And so I think that was a really powerful moment for me. And it showed me that, like, some things they are really hard, they can suck, but at the end of the day, the team can grow from them.
And I don't think like we're saying like, congrats, this bad thing. Obviously, I'm just making that.
Good call.
But I also think that something really important is that we're not talking about like work right now. Like we're talking about people that also go to work. And I think that it sounds kind of pedantic and silly, but it's really important to mention like, this is like life stuff. And to be like, how do you work harder through your parents' cancer diagnosis? Or like, how do you work harder through like having a child? It's like, that's actually not the goal. And that's not that's like, we're trying to acknowledge something that happens to every single person at work
Yeah.
or to somebody's coworker or something
Yep.
like that. And like sometimes it's just about being a good person.
Yeah.
Like sometimes work is secondary and sometimes work doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's like
Hot take from a work life podcast, but like it doesn't matter. And one of the things I'd like to talk about
Yeah.
in a situation is how you decided to tell your
Robert.
wife is pregnant.
Oh, yeah.
About like other coworkers.
Yeah.
Robert, I understand it's like immediate. How did you feel about disclosing this information because it was such a big life change or is going to be such a big
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I haven't told everyone, so we're actually going to find out which of our coworkers listens to the podcast when this comes out. I think when it like is appropriate, I will tell anyone now.
Yeah.
And so when appropriate, like it makes sense in the conversation. They're not like, hey, what do you want to have for lunch? And I'm like, my wife's pregnant.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about like, where were you on Monday? Like you had to go to this like thing outside of work. I'm like, oh yeah, I was at a doctor, and it comes up naturally, or they're asking about Sierra. It makes sense to tell them. So that's where I'm at right now. I think early on, again, just with pregnancy and you never know how it's going to shake out, I was only telling people where I thought it's going to be necessary for them to know because I'm going to be gone at certain hours where I'd normally be here. And to your point, I think then like people speculate. I have a really close relationship with Robert, so I felt very comfortable sharing that information with him. So that's how I decided. It was like, who needs to know first? And oftentimes I think that is going to be your manager to set expectations. And then once you're comfortable, now I'm just kind of disclosing it openly when it makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I was not one of the first people that you told. And so it's a kind of fun for me on my end.
It was like, to talk more about that. Why didn't you
why you didn't tell me earlier? No.
Well, the reason was this also coincided with your wedding.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to be the person who's like at someone else's birthday and it's like,
No.
wife's pregnant.
No.
F this person, my day now. So I wanted to give you your space.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. And I actually am like, I have no beef with how I was told. But I will say, maybe for the first time in public, recorded, that like I could tell that something was up.
Yeah.
Like, I could tell that something was not off, but like something was different. And I felt like, is everything okay? Like I see on his Slack, like he's going to the doctor a lot. Like I wonder if everything's okay, but he clearly doesn't feel comfortable sharing. So I'm not going to ask. I'm not going to pry. But it wasn't ever like, Kyle, what's up? Like how we were kind of just describing that situation, like with my former coworker. It was never like, Kyle's being so weird and different. Like, I hate this. Do you feel like telling people you are a little bit more like...
It's so nice. That's literally what I was going to say. The worst, again, it's much worse for my wife. But the worst thing that I went through was that moment where you're so excited, but you can't tell people. Like it's too soon. And so like, but you kind of have to like dodge it. They'll be like, what's Sierra up to? And you're like, nothing. Why would Sierra be up to anything? She's just fine. Yeah. So you're in this weird spot. And I assume that would also be the case for like, maybe your family member's ill, but like you don't know the diagnosis yet. And there's a really uncomfortable feeling where like it is affecting you, but you can't tell everyone right away. And that's really tough. And I think, you acted very appropriately, which is like you were tuned into it. You didn't pry. Yeah. And eventually you found out and it kind of all makes sense. Yeah. So you should also be very conscientious on the other side of things. Okay, maybe you notice something's up. If you have a really close relationship, maybe you pull them aside. Maybe you just don't say anything, but you're there for them when they do disclose and they're comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's, we're like as humans attuned to other people's behaviors. Yeah. And I think when somebody acts like something is slightly different, someone's going to catch it. And so I think whether it's good, like what our life events are, or not as good, or maybe harder, like people are attuned to that. And I think understanding which types of people you should be disclosing to. There's an HBR article written in 2017, and I can't remember exactly who wrote it, about what happens when like a life crisis impacts your work life. Yep. And one of the things that they were talking about is telling people is almost always a good idea. Disclosing information is almost always going to help your situation, especially if it's really messing with your day-to-day, if you're not able to meet the expectations of your job. And what I love, I think people are inherently compassionate, but they're also not stupid.
Yeah.
And so if you share something that's going on externally with them, most of the time, hopefully, depending on the work environment that you're in, people will respond positively.
Mm-hmm.
And I think allowing that to a very hard thing or a very big thing to impact you and not disclose it is going to have people be more suspicious than compassionate.
Yep.
And as soon as they know, hopefully, that they help pick things up.
Yep.
But the asterisk, the like, wait is like, it can also backfire depending on the information that you're disclosing.
100%. And the company you work for.
Yeah.
And obviously there's lawsuits about this all the time where people are fired because they disclosed information.
Yeah.
And the company acted against them, and that is illegal.
It is illegal, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Especially when we're talking about like, okay, mat leave or maternity leave or paternity leave, or you're disclosing a disability or a chronic illness that may impact your ability to do your job.
Yep.
That shouldn't impact your employment status, but
Yes.
it might. And so I understand why people are hesitant to disclose that information. But I do like there was some research behind it that like, for the most part, it is a good idea to disclose.
Yeah, and I think the research suggested like teams feel more comfortable with each other after, and that
Like what
actually your coworkers will pick up the slack and like are very happy to do more because again, at the core of it, like we're good, compassionate people, you would hope, and so it ends up being for most people a net positive to disclose.
Yeah.
Let's like wrap up here with like some strategies. So if you've listened to this episode, you've been thinking about, okay, yeah, like I do have a life event, maybe I want to disclose, or like, oh, my coworker, something might be up with them. If that isn't happening to you now, it will.
Yeah.
And so if someone found themselves in this situation where they had, a big life event, what is the takeaways you want them to have from this episode?
I think that the expectation setting is the number one thing that I think is the most important. I think being honest with yourself about how this is impacting you and how you expect it to impact you, and try to communicate those expectations to a trusted group of people as much as possible. I think saying, hey, I don't think this is going to impact my work, but it might. Here are some of the signs. I actually don't want to talk about this. Or I love to talk. Like I would love to talk about the details of the situation. Do you have space to take that? And can I vent to you basically about the personal stuff? And I allow them to say no also. But I think setting expectations is the number one thing for somebody that is like experiencing the life event. For somebody that is suspecting that somebody is experiencing a life event, mind your own business. Like, as we've mentioned, like you can suspect and you can identify that something is happening, but it could be they're looking for a new job. It could be like they're going through a minor breakup. It could be like they're dealing with some of their own personal stuff that's not really relevant to you.
Yeah.
What you can do if something's really impacting someone's work is come to them and say, hey, I've noticed blah, 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 XYZ thing is happening. Are you good? Like, I'm here for you no matter what. I just wanted to let you know that. And then back off.
Yeah, and let them be the one who opts into disclosing more information.
Yeah, and remember that the way that you react to a positive or negative event is different for them, almost guaranteed different than anyone else will react to it. So thinking, oh, I would love to talk about this, so I'm going to go to Kyle and be like, well, if it was me, I'd be yapping all over the place. Like, what's up? Why are you like distant or something? Or why are you going to the doctor? Like, that's not how you would necessarily want to disclose or react to that life event.
Yep.
So just be conscious that the way that you would react is different than the way that other people would react.
Yeah, I think that's a really good strategy, and I'll add to it with it's like the idea where people say build a network before you need it. I think the takeaway from this for me is like be vulnerable before you need to be. And so I think as a team leader or as someone that is, just an individual contributor on a team, one of the benefits of like creating some more personal connections and having dialogue about your weekend, even if it seems silly, it allows you to get a little more comfortable with disclosing things that aren't explicitly work related. So when a big life event does happen, you actually have like flexed that muscle. You've developed those relationships where it's easy to tell someone. I imagine if you were on a team that was like all business all the time, and then you have this major life event, you're like, we've never talked about anything. And now I have to tell them like, my mom is really sick and I'm going to have to like, it would be a lot harder. And so I think one of the best things you can do for your team, if you're leading a team or you're on a team and you can lead by example, is like, appropriately create an environment where people are comfortable being a little more vulnerable, comfortable sharing this personal information, you're going to create an environment where people feel much more empowered to disclose big life events that are going to affect the team. And I think that's probably one of the best things you can do.
Last tip on my end.
Okay.
Is that it's a spectrum. Like there's a level of vulnerability and sharing that is good. And one thing we haven't talked about is like we're assuming that people are sharing the right amount of information about their life events and that it's big life events. Like there's also that level, which we talked about in the Gen Z episode. There's also a level of oversharing.
Yeah.
And like some people don't want to know about your parents' divorce. And like some people don't want to know all of the details about, you know, your little sister's illness.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, you know, triggering for them for some reason. So there is also a level of like, you should definitely feel comfortable oversharing, you should definitely feel comfortable sharing your life, but also like be conscious of how that's impacting other people as well.
Yeah.
And if it's not like a major life event, it's like I was on a skateboard and I skinned my knee and like you're talking about it nonstop, nobody cares, you know?
Well, stop talking about it though. I don't care about your knee that much, but yeah.
Exactly.
I think this is a really great tip. And the HBR article basically said the same thing. Like start out just sharing the information that's pertinent to a colleague to like pick up the slack or like understand you're going to be gone. And then depending on the relationship, you can share more based on that. So I think that is a really, really good tactic. I think that's a great place to end.
Seems great.
Life events. They're going to happen to everyone.
They're going to happen. 100% of people, according to me.
It actually, like, this was a really fun episode to talk through because I do think it's just something you don't think about until it happens to you. But it's probably one of the best things to think about before it happens to you. And just to understand that, like, you assume your coworkers are, like, totally fine all the time. That isn't the case. And I think you can show up in ways after listening to this that are better and more helpful to your team. So let's wrap it up there.
I think it's great.
If you have any tips, insights, tricks, you want to hear certain episodes, per my last email at morningbrew.com.
You could also send congratulations to Kyle.
And congratulations to Kaila for being a married woman.
Yeah, and almost a dad.
Yes, I'm almost a dad.
Not me,
You're a
not
married
me.
woman,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, let's roll the credits here. Our producer is Michaela Heck.
Our technical director is Uchenna Ogu.
Erica Gunn is our director of operations.
And our chief content officer is Devin Emery.
This show is a production of Morning Brew.
Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
See y'all. Kayla, why? It's like the easiest thing. It's a layup we give you at the end every time, and you just brick it off the backboard.
I don't know why it's so hard.